What if the goddess you're searching for is the one already within you? Welcome to Catalyst of Change, the space where we explore what it means to lead with soul, create with intention, and serve from the heart. Today's guest, Jia Ida Angelina, weaves ancient feminine practices with modern day embodiment knowledge to work with the brain-body connection, center around feminine energetics. Jia is a reminder that our most powerful medicine is our presence, our truth, and our voice. This is a conversation for the women returning home to themselves and for anyone ready to lead from the inside out. Let's dive in. Hi, I'm so excited to have you here, Jia.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. And I'm excited to dive in to this topic. You know, you carry this beautiful wisdom and embodiment that you share through your workshops, meditations, sessions, through your online platform, really empowering women all around the world. And I'm curious about anyone who's listening, our listeners and those watching. You know, some may be very familiar with the idea of feminine embodiment and the feminine arts, and some, this may be like an entirely new concept. So for those that this is just like a new concept, how would you describe this to them?
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, the feminine arts and feminine embodiment are very similar and they coexist together. So the feminine arts are many different practices, habits that we can adapt that are ancient and also modern, and they come from many different lineages all around the world. And the piece of feminine embodiment is more of a modern take, and feminine arts go thousands and thousands of years back to when women used to live in tribes and we used to connect in community and live in community, and women had these practices that they would do, and these practices have been passed down for many, many years, these ancient practices to connect women to their cycles, to connect women to their bodies, to connect to their breath, to sensuality, to what it means to really harness the feminine energy. And there's everything from different yogic practices, different lineages in Africa, different lineages all across ancient Greece, Egypt. There's so many different practices we can dive into, and lineages, ancient China, and also weaving in the modern day take on these, so embodiment and how the nervous system plays a huge role in how we operate on a daily basis. And I think that it's really powerful to know that wisdom and knowledge as well, especially living in a world that maybe wasn't created for women. So our nervous systems operate in a different way. And it's really beautiful for women to learn more about that and how we can live in this world as regulated women and be able to be leaders and entrepreneurs and live in a way that is harmonious with the way that we are built biologically, energetically, and yeah, I'm very passionate about talking about all of this.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to dive in. And, you know, just hearing what you share, I already have a number of questions around this that I'm excited to really go into. One of them in particular, you know, you mentioned about the cycles of a woman, and you mentioned how we have biologically and energetically kind of like our own way of being. And to someone who's really enriched in this, the feminine arts and this idea, this may be information they're already aware of. And yet there's so many women that are not aware of like how our cycles work and that we are biologically different from men. And that we have these energetic cycles. And one of the things I recently learned, and I mentioned this in another episode, was how women are on, I believe it's like a 28-day or like essentially a 1-month hormonal cycle, whereas like men, it's 24-hour clock. So it's like every day, boom, 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 they have a reset. Whereas for women, there's this whole cycle that goes through the entire month. And I'm wondering, because you mentioned living in harmony with our cycles, how could you share a little bit more about that? I'm curious to hear a little bit, especially for like a newer ear. How would you share about those cycles and how that impacts our life as women?
Yes. So the way that society operates is all geared towards the 24-hour cycle. So the way that school systems operate, the way that work environments operate, usually it's geared towards how we're feeling that day and maneuvering around the world based on how we're feeling that day. And for men, that goes great. So male-bodied people, that is what they need. They are going through many different embodiments and emotions in one day. And at the end of the day, they reset. And for us women, people in woman bodies, we have an infrared rhythm. So men are moving with the circadian rhythm and we're moving on the infrared rhythm. And essentially what that is we're cyclical. We're moving with the phases of our cycle. So we have 4 different phases of our cycle, and this also can change based on women that are perimenopausal, menopausal, and women that haven't had their period yet. So it all changes based on where we're at in our life. So where we're at, what age we're at, and also where we're at in our cycle. So women having a 28 to 32 day cycle, we're completely different and we're going to change every single day. So the way that our bodies are moving through the world is different than men. So it's really important to consider that as a woman and to educate yourself more, learn more about this and how you can attune your body, your work life, your workouts, and just your life in general to cyclical living. And I think also beyond that, it's more of how can we connect to our bodies on a deeper level within those cycles and really start to have more of a dialogue with what's going on based on the connection that we have to our bodies. So there's a lot of information of like, this time in your cycle, you should do this time in your cycle, you should do this. But I think it's also important to really listen to the body and start to build that mind-body connection to really understand what your body needs, because I think that is really powerful as well for women to start to really understand what's going on inside of them on a deeper level and also connecting more to that intuitive wisdom of the body.
I'm so interested in this journey and this path of like listening to the body and like you said, adapting and tuning into the cycles, learning more about that. Is this something like you've always had an awareness of, or was there something that sparked your interest in this? And like, how has it impacted your life?
Yes, it's been such a journey. My personal journey started many years ago in my teens when I remember this one experience that I actually had. I was dating a partner at the time. It was a little bit of a toxic relationship, and I was on the birth control pill. And I remember, but like back then, I really didn't have that connection to my body like I do now. I definitely didn't listen to her, and I would override her a lot in what she had to say. And I also dabbled in like substance abuse and stuff like that, which fogged my connection to her. But in this moment, it was so clear to me that my body was telling me that I was having anxiety and I was having almost these panic attacks. And I knew it was one of the contributing factors was because I was taking the birth control pill. My body was just screaming at me, telling me this. I was having really intense bloating and, like I said, anxiety and these like panic attacks. So I remember going on this walk, and while I was on this walk, like that was the only thing that my body was telling me, like, you need to get off this birth control pill. And back then it seemed a little bit of something that like not a lot of women did. Like not a lot of women were talking about the side effects of the birth control pill, and they were just talking about the fact that you can't get pregnant if you're on it. I didn't realize what it was doing to my body. But I did listen to that knowing, and I went off the birth control pill, and I didn't end up getting my period for about 2.5 years after that. So I went on this whole journey into what is going on with my body, into hormonal health, into building a relationship with my body again, becoming sober, starting to understand my cycle, starting to understand how it could naturally get my period back again. And every single doctor that I went to told me that it wasn't possible. I had to go back on the pill, and that was the only way that I could bleed again. And I felt so disconnected from my body, and I felt so lonely. And I know that so many women feel this way, and so many, like I talk to countless women in the work that I do that experience the same thing. It's almost like our experience is not being validated. When we go into a gynecologist's office or we go into a doctor's office, we're told that we're being emotional, it's our emotions, or we're told that, oh, it's just anxiety, but we're not told that there's a lot of contributing factors to why we might be having these symptoms. So it was very empowering for me to go through that journey and eventually getting my period again. And that is a story that I tell a lot of my clients, or I speak about. There's a lot of nuances within that journey, but I really believe that that was one of the moments that really helped me to understand, like, okay, there's a deeper current and a deeper wisdom within my body, and it's not just my mind. There's something that's biological, that's ancestral, that is connecting with me on a daily basis. And from that moment, I really started to dive into all the different practices. Everything from acupuncture, yoga, meditation, many different practices, different herbal remedies, diving into nervous system regulation, somatics, and it really assisted me in starting to build that connection again. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that story that I feel like you said so many women can relate to. And it's amazing to hear that despite whatever the external feedback was, that you had the courage to feel that inner knowing and follow it. And then go through that process, which I'm sure was not easy, taking those baby steps to start making those changes, to then have this shift in your life. So that's huge. And I really acknowledge you for that. And, one of the things I'm wondering is, like, if there's a woman or, maybe a young lady who's listening to this podcast right now, and she's thinking like, oh my gosh, Gia's talking about me like that. That's something that I'm experiencing, or I have experienced. You mentioned these various practices. What could be like a next action that they could take? Whether it's a practice or something that you would guide them to do in that circumstance.
There's so many beautiful practices to do, and I think that it's really good to not get lost in just the practice. Definitely something that I guide my clients through is very simple practice of reconnecting to the senses. So closing your eyes and allowing yourself to come back into your body. And that's extremely difficult for a lot of people. Guiding through the senses. What are 3 things that you can smell? 3 things that you can taste? 3 things that you can hear? I'm really guiding a deep belly breath into the pelvis and starting to come into more softness. We are constantly bombarded in our daily lives with information, and I know it can be quite difficult to move out of that. So a practice like this can really assist us in starting to understand what we need in that moment. So maybe we don't necessarily need to meditate, but maybe we need to move our bodies in a way that feels good. move our bodies in a way that our body is asking us to. Maybe we want to sigh or make a noise and allow ourselves to sound, which helps to regulate the nervous system. Maybe we're really desiring to go lay on the grass outside and just lie in the sun and breathe in the fresh air. So I think that there's a lot of practices that we can look up on YouTube and online, and we can go to teachers for, but we are actually the teachers. And I think that that is what embodiment teaches us a lot of the time, is that sometimes just listening to our body is the practice and can actually be the most powerful and profound. So definitely just allowing yourself to have those moments of stillness to really go in and listen, and allow yourself to listen to that knowing, listen to that inner nudge. And maybe this looks like you journaling what's coming through for you down on paper. Maybe this looks like you talking about it. Maybe this looks like you creating art with what's coming through, and allow yourself to be in whatever realm that your body is guiding you into.
So powerful. And it really is living the embodiment. Like you saying, like taking the moment and experiencing it through the body. And it's interesting because you mentioned the senses. And I know part of what you do is about sensuality. And I think a lot of times when people hear sensuality, they automatically think sexuality. And even within our own, I mean, it depends, of course, where you were brought up and what your upbringing is. But for many of us, and I know for at least for myself in North America, like sexual education when you're a child and school and things like that, it can be so limited. And what you're explaining is this whole other dimension of accessing presence, which actually is not sexual at all. It's sensual. It's connected to the senses. And my curiosity is like, how would you describe that for someone? Like, what is sensuality and how does that show up? And especially because you are a women's embodiment mentor, how can that show up and be accessed more for women in their daily lives? Love, Peace, Harmony is a global movement founded by Dr. and Master Zhigang Shah, which works to bring healing and hope where it's needed most. But none of this is possible without you. With your support, we can expand our reach, giving more communities the chance to thrive. Join us in building a world filled with love, peace, and harmony. Visit lovepeaceharmony.org to learn more and donate today.
I love that question and everything that you just shared, because it's so true. Sensuality and sexuality are different things. Of course, they can coexist, but sensuality we can all access, and it is our deepest, most primal way of being. It is how we connect back to our humanness and our instinctual nature. And in society, the society that we are in here in the Western world, especially, a lot of people are like desensitized to their senses. They're not really as connected to their senses. And when we think of even our ancestors, like they were so connected to their senses for survival. And it's almost like the process of rewilding. I think this is really powerful for women, especially because we really flourish and our nervous systems regulate when we do somatic practices that provide us with the release of oxytocin. So when we're doing sensual practices, a lot of the time we feel and we connect to that release of oxytocin. And this regulates estrogen in our bodies, and it provides us with a regulated nervous system. So for men, it's dopamine. And you can find dopamine all around us. It's very easy to access dopamine on a daily basis. So when it comes to women connecting back to sensuality, it's actually like biologically necessary for us to regulate our nervous systems, whether that is doing sensual dance whether that is deep belly breaths deep into the pelvis, whether that is self-massage, if that feels safe for you. And women are also really affected by the social nervous system. So co-regulation is really important for us to regulate. So that is why it's so important for women to be in spaces with other women that are safe, to be in these. You've probably seen these sister circles, these retreats. I host retreats and I host women's gatherings and dance events and stuff like this, where women can come together in sisterhood and connect and collaborate and dance and breathe and be in safe spaces together, and also be vulnerable together, which is a huge part of that. And it's amazing to see how women see the benefits of this, like how they feel the benefits of this and how powerful it is, even though it seems like something that wouldn't be as necessary as it actually is in society. Because, I mean, modern day culture really tries to pit women against each other. Like, even from conditioning, from upbringing, women are always told to compete. But actually, one of the keys to our health and well-being is to be in harmony together, to be in balance together, and to co-regulate. And you can also, experience the release of oxytocin by yourself. A lot of people, maybe that doesn't feel safe for them yet. But when we do those practices by ourselves, it eventually will lead to this safety within co-regulation. When we find the group, the people, the woman, a partner who we feel very safe with, that we can experience that with. And yeah.
Wow. I am curious to speak a little bit more about what you mentioned about the importance of coming together as women. And in particular, what you mentioned about so much of the conditioning where we've been almost like just completely conditioned to think we need to compete, or that, we cannot even be in the same room. I'll give you an example. I was at a women's empowerment workshop, The Art of Women Leadership, recently this year. And one of the women was doing a speech, and she was speaking about the Disney princess effect. So she said it was down to such a detail within these Disney that even the same princess in the same shot in the film was not allowed to look in the same direction. So there was always this, like, even on a subconscious level, this sense of like not togetherness. And I just thought that was really interesting, that even in that setting, they actually had like premeditated these messages. And so, and studying critical media theory growing up, at Western and going to an arts high school, we spoke and analyzed a lot of media, particularly film, movies, television, etc., and how women are portrayed. And so for many of us, different generations, having grown up with that, and now with social media, which is just a total amplifier, there's like this interesting underlying unlearning of that programming. And so I'm curious, like, have you witnessed or experienced any shifts in others or in yourself in these circles with those dynamics?
Definitely. It's something that this is such an important topic. I'm so happy you brought this up because it's so real, and I feel like a lot of things are coming to the surface. And even what you just explained with like the Disney movies growing up, like both of us grew up with that and that influence, and so much TV that now I don't think would be playing on TV, because we realize the impact it has on everyone, people of all genders, and especially young girls. And yeah, even the Disney movies, like the really subtle subliminal messages. So it's really beautiful to see a lot of people like speaking up about the ways in which they've been conditioned. And I think that's why there's such a rise of women standing up, creating these spaces for women to reconnect with each other. You know, there's also this huge talk about like shadow work now, and like really like bringing things to the surface and not just pushing them down and creating this tension, but actually like allowing it to breathe and allowing space for those more shadowy, darker parts of society and of ourselves to come to the surface so that we can live our most liberated lives, our most authentic existence, and, you know, bring peace to these parts of us. So yeah, I've definitely, I think even growing up, witnessed a lot of that in high school and stuff like that. And you know, you can call it the sisterhood wound, or, I mean, some people call it the witch wound, which are different things. But, you know, even historically, women have been told that it's not safe to use our voices. It's not safe to speak up. It's something that actually can cause us to lose our lives. So the witch hunts were something that happened, you know, hundreds of years ago, not even that long ago, which is crazy, in many, many different countries all over Europe and beyond, where women, also men, and people of all genders were being accused of being witches. Most of these people were women, and they were prosecuted. They were killed for this assumption that they were witches. What does it mean to be a witch? A magical being, a woman that has sovereignty, a woman that practices natural medicine, a person that practices natural medicine, a powerful woman that is in her autonomy. A lot of the people that were killed were just, they were innocent. They were completely innocent, and they were proven guilty by the fact that they knew how to cure certain diseases and ailments. Anything from the fact that they danced outside their house, anything from talking to a certain woman, anything from just doing anything out of the normal, these people were prosecuted. It was absolutely crazy when we think of it now. And ancestrally, we've like held on to what has happened in the past. We all know that trauma lives in the body. We all know that we are connected to our ancestors. And I think that this has an effect even on women today when it comes to speaking up and using our voices. And one of the main things they did within this time in the world is they would essentially tell women that if they would bring their sister forward, and prove her guilty, then they would save that woman's life. That didn't happen, and both of them would die, but it was essentially creating this distrust between women. And that's a huge wound within the witch wound. So, I mean, this is one time throughout history. I mean, it was happening for thousands of years that women were discriminated against, ostracized, prosecuted for just being women. But it's something that I think is important to talk to you, because a lot of women's history has been erased, and it's unfortunate that this is the conversation that, you know, is being brought up when we're talking about the history of women. But there's lots of magical things that we could also talk about. Women being in their power, being embodiments of that sovereignty, embodiments of their magic. And, you know, there's this kind of fear-based energy. And I really hope that, you know, the new generations are being born into a world where there can be more equality. That's all that any of us want, throughout races, throughout gender, throughout everything. And I think that that is the solution to so much of this. But going back to the point that we're making here about there being this competition between women, it's a very deep wound that has many layers and is very nuanced. So it's very powerful for women to gather together, to do retreats, to become vulnerable with each other, to call each other out when maybe we're not being the most authentic, and to have these safe spaces where we can reconnect to what it means to live in a world where we can be regulated, happy, healthy, abundant, all of the things.
It's so powerful what you have shared, and just the history, thinking to these. And also, as you're sharing this, I'm like, wow. And there's still places to this day where this exists in many ways for women. And, for, of course, all people, there are different layers of oppression, but particularly for women. And, statistics show that.
Yeah.
And, it's beautiful. And, at the same time that it's gut-wrenching and horrific to think about, it's also like beautiful when you share about what's possible. And I feel like what I hear is that in even the circumstances that we carry today and all the challenges and the darkness, you mentioned shadow work, that there is opportunity for like growth and for healing and for togetherness and for expansion. And like you said, this whole other history and rewriting of our existing history, the future history, which is our potential and what's within us, which is so powerful, that liberation that you also share, so beautifully through the liberated feminine, where I know you host workshops and amazing experiences for women to be able to step into that liberation. So I am curious to jump into a little bit of when you mention shadow work, like what exactly does that mean? And what are you speaking to when you say that? Especially for anyone who, even for someone who is familiar, so that there's that mutual context, or for someone who's maybe not heard of that before.
Yes, for sure. So shadow work is something that was coined by Carl Jung, which a lot of people know of Carl Jung. You can look him up and you can learn more about everything about shadow work and what it is. Everyone has their own take on what shadow work is and what the shadow is, but it all has the same root. It all has the same essence. So shadow work is essentially when we take a look into our subconscious, our unconscious self. It is when we put down the ego and we allow ourselves to dive deeper into self and what is going on beyond the surface. So in a lot of what I teach, we move through practices that allow us to see our unconscious self. So a lot of the habits, a lot of the things that we say, mannerisms, embodiments are programmed into us from a young age. Between age of 0 and 7 is when our unconscious, our subconscious is the most susceptible to programming. So a lot of us could be operating from our 7-year-old self. And I know that sounds quite absurd, but it's very much so true. A lot of people have these reactions and these ways of being that are actually tied to childhood, right? So we talk about healing the inner child. So everything that we have been taught through our conditioning that is wrong about us, everything that we have been taught is not okay to speak about, or whenever there's been a time when there was a really strong emotional reaction towards something that you did or said, that could become part of your shadow. So if you were told that it's not okay to express yourself through dance, if your parents were like, don't do that, you're not a good dancer, even if like it was just a moment where they said that, like you could really hold on to that, and that could become something that rules your life going forward, where you just believe in your subconscious awareness that you can't dance, or that expressing yourself is wrong, or that if you do express yourself in this way, you're going to receive bad feedback. You're going to receive ridicule or whatever it is from people around you. And this gets stored within the nervous system and it gets stored within the body. So when we bring these things to the surface through, there's practices of journaling, right? So we're intellectualizing it, and that's an important part of the process. But what I teach is actually connecting to the shadow through the body, because if we're holding the stress in the body or the trauma in the body, that is where we can access it the most. And this is a very patient process. It's a process that can take a lot of time to really get to the root of sometimes, but it's very powerful. And it's a practice that has really helped me on my journey to really understanding why I operate the way I do. And I think a look into our shadow can be through our triggers. So when we are triggered by something, and when we're triggered, we have like a really strong emotional response to something in the outside world, and it's happening inside of us. So if I get really triggered by something that someone says to me or how they say it, if I really sit with that deeper, that trigger, there's so many nuanced layers of maybe why I'm feeling that way. And really sitting with the sensations in the body and diving deeper into that, that's a lot of the embodiment work. And we don't need to intellectualize so much of why, but I feel like it really does help to know that root. So a lot of it could be tied to childhood, or a lot of it could be tied, I believe, even to past lives and ancestrally, because we share DNA with our ancestors. So that's a whole other topic, but we can get really deep into even carrying subconscious patterns, beliefs from our ancestors. It was before us, even if we've never met them in this world. So shadow work is a very powerful process of bringing the unconscious to the conscious so that it doesn't become so scary, so that it doesn't control our lives anymore, and so that we can, it's like the process of self-actualization. It's like we are starting to understand ourselves on such a deeper level, knowing thyself, knowing ourselves, and understanding all of our layers. And I think that this can really be powerful when it's done in safe environments, and something, like I've said, that's really helped me on my journey.
Well, hearing you talk about it is bringing me back to this statistic, which is that subconscious runs 90% of our life. The consciousness is like 10%. So this like running record in the background is like literally, like you said, controlling our life. So to actually be able to access and shift that can change so much. So how was it for you on your journey? Did you have any, what was it like when you realized it in your awareness, like, oh my gosh, this is something running in my subconscious? And were you able to shift some of those messages? And what was the impact of that?
Across the United States, millions are struggling with mental and emotional health challenges, especially our youth. Anxiety, depression, and loneliness are at record highs, and many are searching for inspiration and connection. At Love, Peace, Harmony, we bring healing through art, music, and community programs that inspire resilience and belonging. For $35 a month, you can become a standard member and help us reach more people with the tools to heal and thrive. Together, we can bring hope where it's needed most. Join today at lovepeaceharmony.org.
Yes, I feel like there's definitely been so many experiences where I've brought in the shadow to the light in my own life, constantly being humbled by the process of allowing the ego to rest and bringing the real self forward. And the ego has its place, that's for sure. It protects us. It's very important, but not attaching so much to the identity that we hold of ourselves, and realizing that we really do create our reality and our identity, and what is outside of us doesn't necessarily do that. So for me, really understanding my shadow and those parts of myself that are unconscious has definitely been a long process. And there's been many different times where things were uncovered, where I was initially triggered or I initially wanted to work on one thing, but it brought me to a completely different topic. Like, I thought I just wanted to work on my relationship with money or wealth and, you know, maybe the blocks I had towards that. But then it brings me to the topic of the daddy issues that I have, or the relationship I have to the masculine, or it brings me to the topic not allowing myself to fully move into a space of surrender, always wanting to control. So there's been so many times on my path where I was diving into a shadow and I was like, okay, this is what I want to work on. But it brought me down a whole other neural pathway into a whole other topic that I didn't think I needed to work on. And I was like, okay, like this is really powerful. And it's something that we can't fully access through just living our lives every single day in the conscious world. We need to do certain practices to access the subconscious. Something that's been really powerful for me has been hypnotherapy, because it's given me a chance to really dive into those realms, and also dream work. So really diving into practices, lucid dreaming within my dreams, receiving messages, being able to transform those shadows in my dreams, which is a little bit more of like a complex thing, but that's another topic that I really feel like has helped me a lot naturally. As someone that's just very clairvoyant, I'm very connected to the dream realm, and it's something that I've been able to do, bring healing to those parts of myself. And I think that when we are dreaming, we go to many different realms, but definitely the realm of the subconscious. And also, I definitely feel like just in my daily life. So this is probably where it's the most powerful sometimes, is when you're triggered, you're noticing the trigger, you're moving through it through the body, maybe you're connecting to the why, and you're rewiring it in that moment. So when our brain has created this neural pathway of, okay, this is a safe place, I'm going to go here, and there's a strong emotion connected to it, then it's always going to go back down that pathway. But if you in the moment decide that you're going to change that, and with repetition you change that, whether that is like allowing yourself to use your voice. Maybe it's extremely scary because in the past using your voice has told you that, you know, it's unsafe to use your voice. Like, you shouldn't do this. It's going to lead to people, you know, telling you you're wrong or whatever it might be. And every single time you use your voice, you're creating a new neural pathway. When you receive positive feedback or you receive other feedback, or you doesn't even matter the feedback that you receive, or you're just happy that you tried it and you did it and you posted that thing or whatever it might have been. And you're creating that new neural pathway. So you are changing the relationship that you had to that shadow. And you are actually changing the emotion associated with that action. So you are taking control of your life. And not to say that we all have control of everything. Definitely, I believe in the act of surrender in a lot of circumstances. But I do think that we have autonomy and choice over how we live our lives. And instead of just going off of what the outside world is putting into us, we can actually decide what we are taking in, the information that we are taking in, and we can rewire that for our benefit, for our health, and for our well-being.
Wow. Yes. This is like so deep. And I feel like what you're sharing is empowering, because it is showing us what's possible. And like, no matter what our upbringing, no matter what our life challenges, no matter what our subconscious holds or what we may hold in our body or more, through the power of these practices, through the power of embodiment and doing this subconscious work and all of these, you know, amazing practices and like you said, going even beyond the practice, the wisdom and more, like makes it possible that we can live liberated, that we can live in like a new way, a way that is in solidarity, that is like blissful and, like you said, like pleasurable and sensual and enjoying this present moment, like as we are. And you bring that forward in your wisdom, in everything that you bring, in all of your amazing offerings, and in this conversation today. So I want to thank you so much for joining. And I also want to see, is there anything else you want to share with the viewers? Do you have like a message or anything that you would like to leave everyone with? I honestly feel like we could talk all day, because in every message, there's like a whole other dimension of like what we can go into with this, with the power of this wisdom and practices. And that's what I think is so beautiful about it.
Thank you so much. And I would say, if I'm going to give any type of advice, I guess, or just a little sprinkle of something that's helped me on my journey, lean into that edge. Whatever it is that makes you feel tingly or makes you feel excited or makes you feel alive, lean into that. Live your life fully and don't hold back. Like, just, if it kind of makes you scared, do it. Whether that's like anything, climbing a mountain, public speaking, hosting a workshop, doing a course, like launching a project, like do it. Allow yourself to experience it. You're only going to learn. You're only going to get better, and you're only going to evolve. And that's the purpose why you're here, right? So that's what I'm going to leave you with.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Yes. Lean into it. Lean into the edge. I want to thank you for being here, Catalyst of Change. And those that you don't know, Gia is my sister. Okay, so surprise. But yeah, so I'm like so happy to have you on today, and I'm so proud of you, and you have such amazing wisdom to share with everybody and with the world, and you do such a great service, you know, uplifting and empowering so many women. And yeah, I'm excited for all that is to come. Thank you so much for joining us on Catalyst of Change and being a catalyst of change.
Thank you, Alexia. Love you so much.
Love you too. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Gia, for guiding us back to the wisdom of the body, of the voice, of the soul, and of the sacred truth of the feminine. In this conversation, stirred something for you, share it with a sister rising. Follow Gia's work, her offerings, workshops, and more, and step into the sacred spaces she creates for transformation and remembrance. And as always, stay present, stay purposeful, and remember, you are the catalyst.